Hello, Kim3276. I hope you guys are having a good day. This is part one of the SDS-PAGE, I guess just kind of experiment. I just wanted to show you guys basically everything that's involved in developing an SDS-PAGE, running an SDS-PAGE, and that's what we're going to do for part one. Part two is going to be what the results look like. So basically part one is preparing the protein samples, running those protein samples on your gel. And then part two is going to be staining that gel and visualizing that gel. So we are going to go get ahead and get started with what does the actual running of the gel consist of. So just one moment. So what I wanted to show here was the protein gels. You can see, I don't know if you can hear this in the background. I'm trying to play the 2001 A Space Odyssey theme, the dun, 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 for a dramatic effect. Really though, what I want you to see here is NuPage, NuPAGE, that's our manufacturer. This is and this is really kind of distorted. This is a 10% gel, and it is a bis-tris gel, hence BT, and then this 1.5 indicates the thickness of that gel. It's 1.5 millimeters, so it's very, very thin. So those are kind of the key components of any sort of gel that you're looking at. Now, with that, okay, let's go. I can go ahead and just stop my share, right? I'm sharing that. Yep. And there we had our very exciting representation of what a gel looks like. Now the thickness of that gel, like I said, it's 1.5 millimeters. It's very, very thin. I believe it's millimeters. Yeah, it would be millimeters. It's very thin material. Now, what does that material consist of? Well, that material, or that gel, is, well, it's acrylamide and N,N-methylene bisacrylamide. These two things that are combined together to make this guy right here. Okay, so what we saw was a gel that was, I think I can use my text tool. We saw a 4% gel. Okay, now that's important to know because we saw a 10% gel, not a 4%. Oh, that's not what I wanted. We saw a 10% gel, not a 4% gel. So what's significant about that is your gel is going to, or the percentage of your gel is related to this cross-linking and how frequently you see this cross-linking right here. Now, how does that cross-linking take place? Well, it takes place with the help of these two components, N,N,N,N tetramethyl ethylene also known as TEMID. You can go ahead and call it TEMID. It's a little bit easier to remember that than N,N,N,N. And APS, also known as ammonium persulfate. What these two components do is they basically pair up to help the radicalization of the acrylamide and methylene bisacrylamide. So what that ultimately is going to do is going to increase, based on the addition of more and more TEMID and APS, it's going to increase the percentage of a gel from 4% up to, I believe the highest that I think that I've seen is about a 20% gel. 20% is high end. Not quality or anything, but the higher end of a gel's percentage. Now, when is that relevant? What is important about that? Well, what that's important for is we're using SDS-PAGE, and we're using gel electrophoresis to separate proteins based on their molecular weights. Now, a 4% gel versus, say, a 20% gel, let's just use those extreme ends. Those are going to be used for different reasons. A 4% gel is really effective for separating proteins that are very close in size to one another. So if you wanted to separate a protein that was, say, 150 kilodaltons, so 150 kDa, from a 151 kilodalton protein, you would want to use a lower percentage. Use a lower percentage. Now, if on the other hand, you wanted to separate, say, a 250 kilodalton protein from a 150 kilodalton protein, in that case, you'd want to use a higher percentage. So that's an important part about separating proteins from one another. Now, with all of that said, you're more common than not going to use something that's kind of in the middle. It depends on what your purposes are. Like if you wanted to separate a protein that had, let's say, had been post-translationally modified. Let's say that it had been phosphorylated from a protein that had not been phosphorylated. Then you would use something that's a much lower percentage if you already had kind of a pure protein to work with. So think about it like if you want to fine-tune separate, you want to use a much lower percentage. Whereas if you want this kind of gross separation, you'd want to use a higher percentage. You'll still be able to you will always be able to separate regardless of the percentage. But what it comes down to is the resolution that you get. So if we were separating a, let's go with this 150 from 151. On a 4% gel, sorry, I don't have my tablet here to write this, so I'm using my trackpad. A 4% versus a 20%. That's a 20, there we getting closer, and there we go. Okay, so if you resolve these proteins, here's our gel. If you separated them for long enough, a 150 would look like this, and a 151 would look like this. That smaller protein separates. Whereas this 20% gel, what you're going to see is basically one band. And if you used a microscope or something and you were able to zoom in a whole lot, you might be able to see a separation between those two proteins. But what you would ultimately have to do is run this gel for so much longer in order to get separation between those proteins. And what happens is if you run the gel too long, the proteins simply leave the gel altogether, and they will basically go back into a solution. So you'd never really be able to define them. So think about it as minor differences, use a low percentage. Major differences, use a higher percentage. So these are all the components that you're playing around with. This cross-linking percentage or this cross-linking frequency abundance, that's what's going to change your percentage and change basically what you want to do in terms of resolving two different proteins from one another. Okay, so there's our quick rundown of the polymerization. You need those components, the acrylamide, the N-N-methylene bisacrylamide, the TEMID, and the APS. The TEMID and the APS have an impact on, they have an impact on the radical formation, and therefore the cross-linking frequency. But that's basically what you're working with there. Okay, now, so after having looked at the gels themselves, what I want to show you is the sample buffer that you have to use. Now, this is a _PAGE SDS sample buffer. This is a 4x sample buffer. And basically what this consists of is a strong purple pigment, and it has a couple of other components to it. It's got SDS, or sodium dodecyl sulfate, which is what SDS-PAGE stands for, sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. It also has two very important components, and those are DTT and BME. These are both reducing agents. Dithiothreatol and beta-mercaptoethanol. So what these do is they break disulfide bonds, so that any sort of cysteine-cysteine disulfide bond that exists between or within a single polypeptide or that connects multiple polypeptides, well, this is going to break those. The role of SDS is this provides a uniform negative charge across the length of a protein, so that SDS provides these negative charges on the surface of that protein. So what that enables is our proteins to be separated with a correlation between their charge, kind of the I guess not the gravity, but the magnitude of their charge and their size. So the protein, if it's 120 amino acids, is going to have approximately 120 negative charges, compared to a protein that's 400 amino acids, that's going to have approximately 400 negative charges. So by providing proteins with a uniform charge, then you can separate based on molecular weight. Okay, so that's our sample buffer, and that's what that consists of. Now, the next thing that I want to show is, let me go ahead and clear drawings, and we're showing that. New share. Nope, that's the same one. Stop the share, because what you do with that sample, or that sample buffer, is you're going to add it to your protein sample. And what you have to do when we're doing SDS-PAGE is you have to completely denature your protein. And so if you look in the next video, which I apologize, the form is on its side. I didn't intend to do that, but oh well. So what this is a hot plate that's at more than 90 degrees Celsius. So what this is going to do is it's going to denature proteins by basically disrupting any sort of hydrogen bonds or any sort of ionic interactions, in combination with the pt and the beta-mercaptoethanol breaking those disulfide bonds. So whenever you've added your loading buffer into your protein sample, you're then going to put that protein sample onto a hot plate, and you're going to incubate it for 5 minutes. So when you incubate your protein for 5 minutes, you have all these different factors that are basically denaturing your protein. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do whenever you're loading a protein gel is you're going to use this protein ladder, which, once again, think about the 2001: A Space Odyssey theme playing dun, 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 for this video. We've got, here's the benchtop, but oh no, there it is. This is our, oh, yep, Butterfingers there on is me. It's coming into focus. There we are. Novex Sharp pre-stained protein standards. So what this sample allows us to do is have a molecular weight ladder. So these are all proteins that have been purified by somebody else, and they have known molecular weights. So what this is going to allow you to do is, and again, I'm going to try to draw a little gel here. Here is the gel, your ladder, your molecular weight ladder, this right here, is going to have all of these proteins, and they're going to run here, 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 and here. Now, the significance of this is this one at the top, this protein at the top. Oh, I got to change that. That will have a known molecular weight. It's 120 kilodaltons. I change the, there we go. Then this next protein, 80 kilodaltons. This next one would be 35 kilodaltons, and then the next one would be 10 kilodaltons. Okay, so what that allows you to do with these pre-stained molecular weight standards, whenever you run your protein, which I'm going to label 1, onto a gel, and it migrates to right there, you'd be able to say, oh, well, based on the migration distance of this protein and this protein, my protein of interest right here is approximately 88 kilodaltons. based on these migration distances. And so what you would do is you develop a standard curve that shows your migration distance versus the log of your molecular weight. So log of log, there we go, log of your molecular weight. And then you'd have your migration distance. And there we go, that's better. You'd be able to draw this curve that shows, and so you'd be able to calculate based on the migration distance, how large is this protein, or how large is the protein that you have. So you can make a very precise estimation on that. All right, so the key parts of preparing a protein sample is, one, whenever you cast a gel, first of all, or you use what's known as a precast gel, which is what we're using, and I'll show you kind of what you need to do with that at the end. You will load a molecular weight ladder. You will take your protein samples and incubate them with a sample buffer to fully denature that protein. Then whenever you're ready, you're going to load those protein samples onto a gel. And so what I'm going to show you here is kind of what that looked like. I got to mute this. There we go. And then here you can see all of the different wells that are being loaded. Now, what you're going to see is the volume of these samples go up. So what I'm doing is I'm increasing the volume of my samples across all of these. The reason for that is I want to show, and whenever we visualize our gel, I want to look at what does a different amount of protein in a given well look like compared to a fixed volume. So I loaded one gel with 10 microliters of a sample in every single well. Different samples, different protein concentration, but a fixed volume. Here, what I wanted to do was, well, I tried to load as much protein sample into each one of these wells. And so here's what we would get to. We top that one off, and boom. Okay, so there we have an increasing of protein, an increase in protein amount across all of our wells. So next up is, well, we've got to turn our power supply on, and there we go. Turn the power supply on. I run gels at below 150 volts. And what you're looking for is, you can see those bubbles that are beginning to kind of bubble up, begin to evolve where our electric current is running through our sample. What we are doing is we're running from a negative charge to a positive charge at the end. So from an anode to a cathode, for the purposes of our negatively charged protein migrating towards that positively charged electrode. Those bubbles indicate that we do indeed have a current running through there, so we're good. And if you catch that at the end there, this is what our gel rig looks like all together. We've got a top, we've got a container where our gels are staying, and then we've got those, that top actually has those electrodes that run through it. Now, over time, as you're running your protein gel, you'll see something like this emerge. Let's go back to the first one there. So what you're seeing there is that sample buffer, that LDS sample buffer, it had a deep purple color, but that dye is actually a number of different dyes. And so what you see is it separates into a couple of different pigments. And that's going to give you kind of an idea of how your protein sample is migrating through the gel. Now, this blue marking or this blue color down here at the bottom, what you want to watch for is this to get to the very bottom of the gel or to get to one point in the gel so that you know, okay, I'm going to stop resolving my protein samples here. Now, you can see that, and what we've got then is basically our proteins, our samples are migrating through the gel. The sample on the far right-hand side of our gel, right here, draw, there we go. This is our molecular weight ladder. This has proteins of known sizes, and they're going to migrate. And you can kind of see, or I hope that you can see, in my video, I can kind of see a faint pigment here, a different faint pigment there. And so that indicates that my proteins are indeed migrating through my gel, which is a great place to be in. Now, once you've let your protein samples migrate as far as you want them to, or as far as you need them to, what you're going to do is we've got the central gasket that holds all of the running buffer in the middle of it. You're going to, oh, there we go. You're going to take those two gels out. I didn't let my proteins resolve all the way. I didn't really want to. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have this plastic casing where your gel is found in between it, and you want to crack that open so that you can get your gel out of it. And here I actually just kind of cracked it completely. I didn't really want to do that, but you're going to separate those pieces of plastic so that you can get your protein gel out of there. Here's another, this is better. You can separate the pieces of plastic and you'll be able to see those pristine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my gel off of there and put it into that container that in the next video you will see me add the stain and the destain solution. At any rate, I hope this was helpful. I hope this showed you kind of the logistics of running a protein gel, as well as some of the different reagents that you're working with. The key with this is that we're doing an SDS-PAGE. This is a denaturing, or this is running a gel under denaturing conditions. At any rate, I'll see you in part 2 of this video. Have a good one.